Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new edition of Pod By The BAE. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Joined alongside me, Seth Varnadore, Robert Steeg. Fellas, it is another victory podcast after your South Florida Bulls thoroughly decimated FAU 44-21 down in Boca on Friday night. It was quite literally the tale of two halves. Seth, you were busy during the first half.
I was.
And you asked us before we got on, should I even watch the first half? Didn't miss much. I mean, you missed a really cool angry run by Naquan Wright, but
Yes.
that's about it.
Seen the highlights of that one, so I guess I'm caught up.
That's all you need.
There you go.
Basically. And that run was kind of the precursor to what the second half was for your Bulls. Just real quick, in the first half, USF garnered 166 yards of total offense. In the first half, they trailed 14-7. In the third quarter alone, they had 201 yards of offense. And they won the quarter 24-7. And they didn't look back after that. They took a 10-point lead into the third quarter, and it just ballooned out from there. I think the key, maybe the most important thing that we need to talk about is the post-game handshake between head coach Alex Golesh and FAU head coach Tom Herman. He had it coming.
Hey, man. It ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun, right? That's the same. So you gotta, those things come back around. You gotta pay those. You gotta pay for those eventually. Yeah. So, I mean, really, Golesh 2-0 on the evening.
Absolutely, completely dominated the night. So much so that Tom Herman's wife had to come in and stop him from making an even bigger fool of himself. That was phenomenal. And then he kind of doubled down on, I think it was Monday, basically saying that Golesh slapped his hand away. Seemed pretty clear. It was just a really quick, firm handshake. Golesh came rocketing down with that handshake, and then he was gone. Obviously, Tom Herman, notorious douchebag and prick, did not like having it turned, the tables turned on him, and chased after him like a petulant little child that he is.
Listen, Golesh's handshake process is elite, and it was just an up-tempo handshake.
Up-tempo. All gas, no brakes.
Yeah, just a no-huddle, up-tempo handshake.
If you don't want it to happen again, don't, kick an onside kick up 56-14 in the fourth quarter because you want to try to prove a point. I think the point was proven. At least both teams have won in the opposing team's home field. So I guess next season's the rubber match if Tom Herman makes it to next season. With the way things are going, who knows?
Yeah, this is
a coach.
I think that a good point of clarification. I think a lot of the people we've kind of talked, people in Discord all seem to agree. This is not a USF versus FAU rivalry. No. This is a everyone hates Tom Herman rivalry.
Right.
So if Tom Herman's gone, it probably goes back to being, I'm sure, still a hotly contested game, but a lot of the hate goes out the window with Tom Herman.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, we even got a John Boy video breaking down the post-game handshake, and if you scroll through the YouTube comments, almost overwhelmingly, Tom Herman did not cover himself in glory on Friday night, and them's the breaks. Couple quick things. The offensive line is probably the story of the night. Even in the first half, when things weren't going well, Steeg, they protected the quarterback really well. There was one sack allowed, and it was just the defense schemed up the play pretty perfectly. Roll out to the right, you bring two guys off the edge. I mean, you rolled out into the blitz, and that's kind of what happens. But from your vantage point, what was impressive to you about what this offensive line was able to do for basically 4 quarters on Friday night, when we really haven't seen that kind of effectiveness all season from them?
Yeah, it was pleasant, wasn't it? It was nice to see what the offense can do when the offensive line plays well, and is playing as a cohesive unit. Because there were at times that individually a guy or two might have played well, but as a whole, the unit has to play well for the offense to succeed. Obviously, you can't just have a stud left tackle and then just expect to, succeed from that. So it was nice that it finally looks like it's starting to come together for what feels like 3 weeks in a row, right? Going back to Memphis and UAB, relatively good job of keeping Archie clean, opening up running lanes every once in a while. A lot of the gripes that some people might have had against Memphis wasn't necessarily the fact that, they couldn't run the ball as well or anything, but some killer drops probably did more to affect that. But now you're starting to get the whole crew confident. The offensive line plays well. The running backs play a little bit well. The running backs play well. Okay, the receivers now get one-on-one coverage instead of getting shadowed basically every play. And then they're starting to get open, and that's allowing your quarterback to play confidently. So it has the ripple effect when that offensive line plays well. And you can see that from around the country too. This is not a USF specific issue. This is when you have a good offensive line, you play well. When you have a bad offensive line, you play poorly. And it's literally as simple as that.
And we've talked about it for a year at this point. Cole Best got his first start of the season a couple weeks ago, and it looked pretty good. And then he got a bye week and had another week of reps as the starting center, and the offensive line just has completely gelled. Seth, frankly, we've been on this for about a year that there probably needed to be a center change, and it finally happened. Golish did admit on Tuesday during his press conference that changing up the offensive line is probably one of the harder things for a coach, because it's basically 5 guys doing the exact same thing, and for continuity's sake. But man, it finally happened, and it kind of paid off in space, didn't it?
Yeah, I think they did some stuff to help them out a little bit too. And they've been more like gap run where you're down blocking with good angles and pulling guys, but they were pretty heavily gap scheme against FAU. Ran some screens as well, and then you also saw some rollouts. Now that one that did lead into the sack, but otherwise they were able to move the pocket a little bit, make it a little bit easier on those guys. But in the run game, they were really, really good. Obviously, when you end up with 300 yards rushing plus, almost had 3 guys hit 300. Almost had 3 different guys hit 100 yards. You're obviously doing something right. So, and then in terms of protection, like we've been saying for a while, especially earlier on in this year, that it's really hard for the quarterback when the pressure's coming up the middle. Like when the pressure's compressing and pushing the pocket, that is really hard to manage. If it's off the edge and you can step up into a clean pocket, that's a lot easier for a quarterback. But right up the middle is tough. And that's where a lot of the issues were, I thought, early in the year. You go watching these games and the middle of the offensive line is getting pushed back in the quarterback's lap. That did not seem to be an issue against FAU. So hopefully, if you can be strong up the middle there, that'll make life a lot easier on the quarterback.
Yeah, just looking at the big plays on the ground on Friday night, they had 9 rushes of 10 or more yards, totaling 245 yards. So they were gashing them 17 yards, 64 yards, 32, 38, 10, 10, 15, 17. And then Teron Keith kind of capped it off with a 42-yard touchdown run shockingly enough, up the middle. It just makes this offense so much easier to produce in the passing game. Golish has mentioned this multiple times, that basically the offense is predicated on how well they are able to run the ball. And you saw it on Sean Atkins' touchdown. It was a crossing route. They'd have a play action. Bryce Archie, it seems to me like they're holding the ball. He's holding the ball a little bit longer in the mesh point before breaking off and actually doing the play. Even when he's actually handing the ball off, holding it there a little bit longer to let the defense kind of come in. That's what I saw, like watching it back today. It's what I saw on Friday night. But he holds the mesh point on the play action. All three linebackers shoot up. It's basically one-on-one. Three guys go out in a route. One-on-one, safety has Sean Atkins. And then CJ Hurd, the freshman linebacker, safety, whatever you want to call him for FAU, he's get caught in no man's land. He takes a couple steps forward, takes a couple steps back, and that hesitation allows Bryce Archie to kind of basically put it over the middle, put it right over his head, straight into Sean Atkins' hands. Because of that hesitation, the CJ didn't get enough, space back to make that window a little bit tighter. But that's kind of what you're seeing when you're able to run the ball as effectively as you can. You can get these deep shots, and we'll kind of get more into the in detail stuff about the deep shots and everything like that in the Ponderosa. But it was nice to see, one hand washes the other, and it was really, really effective. Moving forward, USF has a very tough game on Saturday. It's homecoming. This is the hurricane delayed homecoming. They've got the groundbreaking event on Friday afternoon, leading into a 12 o'clock meeting, if I'm not mistaken, 12 o'clock on ESPN2 against Navy at Ray J. Navy's coming off a brutal loss to Notre Dame, and then just a weird loss to Rice. Do we have an explanation of how they lost by 2 scores to a fairly bad Rice team?
Turn the football over, maybe a little dead cat bounce, and then they had like a really long delay.
They did
with weather, so maybe that was some of the weirdness. I was looking at because I was trying to find some film of the game for the film room later this week, just to see what they're doing different this year offensively and things like that. And they had the Navy, radio broadcast, and it was 8 hours long. Because I think it was like a live to YouTube maybe, and so it was 8 hours. It was an 8 hour long video. So well, I'm not going to download that one. So yeah, I think that probably has something to do with it, I would imagine.
Yeah, they lost at Rice 24-10. The actual game took 5 hours and 54 minutes.
Oh.
That's a long time. So I think Navy's better than they've shown the last 2 games. I think they're probably closer to what UAB Air Force Charlotte saw when they won by 20 plus points in each game. I think that's what we'll see. Alex Golish mentioned it on Tuesday. They've changed some things offensively, so that they're still a triple, but they're doing what Army tried to do last year before just scrapping it. They're just doing it really effectively. Quarterback Blake Horvath has been phenomenal for them throwing the ball this season, and he's also their leading rusher. I think that's the guy you need to be worried about if you're a Bulls fan. He's the guy that kind of stirs the drink for Navy. He has accounted for 10 passing touchdowns this season. How many passing touchdowns did Navy have in 2023? I'll let you guys take a guess.
2.
Oh, I was going to go with 2 as well. I'll say 1.
10.
No.
So through 8 games, he's already matched their entire season output in 2023. And he's completing almost 60% of his passes while doing so. This is not your grandmother's Navy. This is not my Navy. All right. I don't even recognize these people, but they're doing it pretty effectively. Some spread shotgun stuff, some spread option out of the shot. Like they're throwing the ball around a little bit more, which makes it a little bit more difficult to defend. Seth, when you're defending against the triple option, what are 2 or 3 key things that you absolutely need to do defensively to make sure this doesn't become just an absolute train wreck?
Well, it sounds like super generic, but it's like you really got to like do your job, like whatever your assignment. Because what happens, is, especially a lot of times, is guys start to, especially on the back end, guys start to kind of let their eyes wander, maybe take a step downhill when they shouldn't, and then that's when you get the huge like throws over the top. So um, you hear a lot of defense coaches talk about eye discipline. So like watching what you're supposed to be watching and doing your job. So if I'm the dive guy, I've got to take away the dive. I can't like try to jump, try to get, run up field and make the play on the quarterback and then just give a huge lane for the dive. So you guys got to, I know it was interesting. I thought Golish talking about Navy today, and then you also heard Bryce Archie talking about it. I think they used the word disciplined a ton. And I'm sure that's a word that's being thrown around this week for like, you've got to match that discipline. Because if you do and you play the dive well, it's just you've got to have guys playing each section of it. And what happens a lot of times is guys get outside of their comfort zone. Maybe I'm not used to being read and I don't do my job, and now instead of taking away the dive, I get upfield, dive pops, right? I go down to take away I jump on the dive as I'm a linebacker and I'm supposed to get out. I'm scraping over the top for the quarterback or something, and now I try to take away the dive, and now the quarterback's pulled it, and now he's out in space, and the pitch man's screwed because he's got to defend 2 people. So just really being disciplined, doing whatever your assignment is. I want to go back and watch it. I'm hoping to have it for the film room of how USF tried to play it last year, just the triple parts, because they were successful at times, and then obviously the final score was a high scoring game. But I think that's the other part of it. Like you've just got to come out fast on offense and get them out of their stuff. Like that's what Rice got a 14-0 lead and was able to, I think, maybe get them out of their comfort zone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do that. Yeah, like Horvath threw the ball 21 times last week. That's the most he's thrown all season by far. He only threw 14 times against Notre Dame and they lost 51-14. Like 20, he was way out of his comfort zone, and you saw him throw 2 picks and had his lowest completion percentage. Right, like he's a pretty good passer, but a lot of this stuff is wide open. So I think if you can get them into obvious passing situations. But you're not gonna be able to do that if you don't like stop the first thing. Like that's the thing with a lot of these option offenses. They'll show you the first thing, and then depending on how you stop it, they get to 1 and 2. But if you never stop one, they just keep running 1 and 1 and 1,
Right,
and you're screwed. So do your job, do what you're supposed to do, and you're hoping your coach has a good enough plan to kind of slow it down. Now you probably won't slow it down fully, but you can slow down a little bit if your offense does their job. Then hopefully you kind of get them playing left-handed a little bit.
Yeah, a couple guys to kind of keep an eye on. I mentioned Horvath, great passer for them, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's also the leading rusher. He's carried the ball 109 times, 814 yards. He's averaging 7.5 yards a carry. He's accounted for 12 rushing touchdowns. He's had a long of 90. Golish mentioned, he's not just like a running quarterback who scrambles around. He's a just straight up runner. And if you look back at last year's game, there's a couple of times where the quarterback kind of got loose on him. Horvath did throw a touchdown in last year's game. You mentioned being your eye discipline, gap discipline. It was 4th and goal near the goal line, play action, wide open. At the end, and then also they hit a deep shot that was just completely busted coverage later on in the game as well. So they'll get theirs. You just, Golish said it, rally tackle, get them down, make them play another snap. I think that's absolutely the key here. Alex Teska is second on the team, 68 carries, 370 yards, 7 touchdowns. Eli Heidenreich is their slot back. He's got 38 carries for 231 yards, 6.1 yards a carry. But the important thing is he is their wide receiver. He is their go-to guy. He's listed as a slot back, 28 catches, 551 yards, 5 touchdowns, averaging nearly 20 yards a catch. So that's the kind of big play explosiveness that you're kind of used to from a triple team offense.
Speaking of explosiveness,
Jeez Louise. So again, rally tackle. And Seth, you mentioned something about turnovers. What has Navy been doing turnover wise this season?
so the last interesting, like in their wins, they were really good. So outside the first game of the year, where against Bucknell, they threw 2 interceptions and gained 2 fumbles, so they were kind of neutral there. Every other game before the Notre Dame game, they had a positive turnover margin. Temple +3, Memphis +1, and that was a pretty that game was pretty close there at the end, so that extra possession helped a ton. UAB +2, Air Force +1, Charlotte +5. And then you get to the Notre Dame game, and they were -6 and got blown off the field. Rice, they gave up. They gained 2 and then threw 2 picks, so they were kind of neutral there. So when they don't win the turnover margin, it's a little bit tougher for them. The first game they didn't win, it was against Bucknell, but it was 49-21. So I think, and I'm sure we'll get into predictions later, I think USF can move the ball on. Maybe we kind of saw the matchup, how they kind of match up last year a little bit. But the key is going to be don't give them extra possessions, because not only are you taking away possessions, but like they'll be happy to just grind you out and take time off the clock. So if you're just going to give away possessions, they're going to make it really hard on you.
Another thing to be mindful of, red zone. They've been really good offensively in the red zone. They've had 29 possessions. 24 have ended in touchdowns. They've chipped in 2 other field goals. So they've scored on 26 of 29 red zone possessions this season, which I don't know if you guys know this or not, but that's pretty damn good. And then on the flip side, opponents have only scored on 15 of 28 red zone possessions, that scored touchdowns on 15 of 28. So another thing to be mindful of, they'll go for it on 4th down quite a bit. They're 10 of 14. And then their 3rd down percentage is hovering just under 39%. I'd be willing to bet prior to these last 2 games, it was probably closer to like 45%. 3rd down percentage conversion, just 2 weird games. Don't get behind. You cannot have a repeat of 2023, because you don't have kind of the explosive offense that you need to kind of get back into the game here. And they're not going to gift you basically 9 points off of a returned extra point and basically the quarterback dropping the ball and it just being on the ground, right spot, right time. So vitally important that they take care of the ball, be effective, and hit a freaking deep shot. I think that was the one frustrating part from Friday night. I think the offense probably looks a little bit better in the first half if they hit 1 or 2 of those deep balls that they had. I mean, the one to Jaquan is probably one that sticks out to everybody. But there was a couple other opportunities in that game to kind of take the top off the defense and make it even easier to run the ball. So watch out for that as well. I got nothing else preview-wise. You guys have anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Basketball?
I guess.
Quick mention of basketball?
Basketball.
I thought they looked pretty good in the game against Florida. I watched bits and pieces of it. C.J. Brown?
Might be a dude.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a dude. He picked a couple of Florida's guards' pockets pretty clean last night. Had the clamps on them. So I think this is going to be a really good team again. Just watching them play, like they play the right way. They've got a good mix of size and skill. I think they're going to be, and like the guards, if you go from Reed to CJ Brown, like the guards are going to be relentless for the entire game. That's going to be tough for people. I think get another good team. So, what did you guys think?
I thought great for obviously, you're gonna get a little bit of home cooking in Jacksonville, Florida when you're playing the University of Florida. Went about as what I expected in the second half. This Florida team is immensely talented. Like this is like they had him projected at like fourth in the SEC from the coaches poll, and I think that was just because like, hey, you brought in some new pieces. These other three teams ahead of you have a little bit more continuity, but I mean that is going to be a very dangerous Florida team going forward. I thought you shook off what I thought would be a slow start and didn't have one, and you just picked up right where you left off last season, which is staying aggressive on defense, hitting threes. Obviously extenuating circumstances around this program. The fact that they didn't let things like that lapse, and you're very rarely going to have these massive, free throw disparities. The only notes of concern to me were like the long stretches without scoring towards the end there, but I think that was more out of desperation shooting than it was to actually make a mark. So all was good. I mean, I wish it was like a 10-point loss instead of a 15-point loss, but what can you do about it? And then women's basketball played really well yesterday as well. I have a thought about that, but I'm going to save it for the Ponderosa.
Oh snap!
And I'm actually going to say it in the Ponderosa this time, and like I did last time.
Yeah, I thought men's like you said, the men's team was good for stretches in that first half. You go up, I think they went up like 11 points, and it kind of deteriorated pretty quickly. I think that will, like, being able to stop the bleeding and kind of reset either via a timeout or just getting a stop and score. I thought there was a few times last night where they got to stop and then they just rushed. Like, I know it's like part of their offense, but they just kind of finally got to stop and kind of rush the shot real early in the shot clock. That was probably not even a B grade shot. I think maybe reset, kind of get into the offense and go from there. But this team looks really deep in what
is that the Chris Young? Is that like kind of the Chris Youngblood hole, basically, early? The guy that can kind of just be a stopper for you into like a moment, like he can kind of stop it. Because we saw that a lot last year where things would start to turn, he'd come down and hit a shot and just kind of steady the ship.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a hole that needs to get figured out. Again, game one, horrific circumstances, basically 10 days prior.
Yeah.
So I can't really be too upset. They've got another road game against Charleston, and then they're home. The 13th, 12th or 13th, I think, for their home opener.
I'll be there.
There you go.
I'll probably be there too. So
I know from the Florida side, their coach is like really obsessed with scheduling really good out of conference teams because he's obsessed with like manipulating the net. So I think that kind of shows you too, like what other people think of the program. Like that's a game they wanted to get on because they knew USF would be a quality team, and I think that showed for sure when you watched them play. So
yeah,
I mean, excited. Could be another fun year to actually watch the basketball team. 2 years in a row.
They did obviously dropped in the net or at Ken Palm. However, they're at 106, and I immediately see what is that? 8 spots above them is UAB. So UAB being the trendy pick. Florida Atlantic's at like 88. Memphis probably climbed up super high because they beat Missouri.
Yeah, and for folks at home who may not know, what happened to UAB on Monday night?
They lost to Vermont.
Got it. Okay.
Vermont,
Sure.
let's be real. Vermont's pretty good. They're usually the consistent Colonial conference winner. But they should probably win those types of games if they made as much progress as they did.
Yeah.
It's tough when you don't get the old whistle.
Yep.
Like, we lost to Florida. I don't want to throw glass stones at a house.
Do it.
But,
Yeah, Vermont's 80th in Ken Palm, it looks like. So, right around UAB-ish. All right.
Let's get out of here on this. We've got a very important pick to make. I'm putting what is now 8-0 against the spread.
It's an unbelievable streak.
It really is. So, obviously, for obvious reasons, I'm going to go last because the anticipation. So, according to Hard Rock, Navy is a 3-point favorite on Saturday, and the over/under is 57.5. Robert Steeg,
oh Jesus!
What says you?
Don't make me go for. Let's be 100% honest.
Do it.
It's hard to play Navy. It is hard to play Army. These are not fun games. These are not fun games to project either. Things can snowball really fast for either team, and there is no precursors or preconceived notions to decide how these games are going to go. Let's be 100% honest with this. Like, you can have the best run defense in the country, but like 3 guys make a mistake on defense, and all of a sudden you're in a 21-0 hole. So let's clear the air. USF, by nature, should be a pretty good against the run. They match up just on the back end defensively and man coverage. Turnovers are going to be the name of the game, and turnovers is what USF tries their best to do on defense. That is the MO. So I'm going to give Alex Golish his first victory over a 500 team and say USF is going to win here outright.
Seth, what says you?
What do you have the total at?
57.5.
Give me. I'm going to say over. Let's go over here. I think USF will be able to move the ball on Navy's offense or on Navy's defense, and then I don't know. I'm not super positive just because I haven't seen a ton of it, but the Navy offense seems pretty tough. So I'll go over, but I could definitely see Steeg being correct as well.
I get it. I get everybody's thoughts here, but you got to prove it to me. Navy -3. Beat a good team. Navy is a good team. Regardless of what's happened in the last couple of weeks, they are a good team. When you put up 56 on a Memphis team, that's impressive. Charlotte Air Force. I mean, they haven't really played many people, but I think Memphis is probably they were able to keep score with a Memphis team that has a very, very good quarterback, maybe the best one in the conference. And they did it pretty well. UAB kind of is ass. It gets pointsy. I think the safe bet is probably doing the over 57.5.
Yeah.
I think only 3 times they haven't hit it, and that was Temple because Temple's bad. Air Force because Air Force couldn't score.
Air Force is also very bad.
And then the Rice game, which they forgot that there was a game to be played. But other than that, 65 points, 68 points, 59, 100, and then 70. These games can get pointsy for Navy this season. It's definitely a different kind of Navy team. But I still beat someone good. I am going to be so happy if you break My perfect 8-0 against the spread this season when you knock off Navy at home on homecoming.
That'd be lovely.
But beat someone good. Until then, be safe, be nice. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
The Bulls.